Have you ever noticed that after an hour of thinking, researching, comparing, asking other people, you end up with the exact same answer you had in the first 10 seconds? So here's the question. If the first answer was right, what exactly was that extra hour giving you? Because most people assume it was making the decision better. I don't think it was. In fact, I think that extra hour may be the very thing that's making it harder to trust yourself. And once you see why, you'll notice this pattern everywhere. Because this isn't really a thinking problem. It's not a lack of intelligence. It's not indecisiveness. It's not some character flaw you need to fix. It's something much more specific. The same system that made you sharp analytically slowly taught itself that the first response wasn't enough on its own. That whatever showed up internally had to be verified, checked against something external, confirmed before you could actually trust it. And that process has been running for so long, so automatically, that the original signal is barely audible underneath it anymore. Last time we looked at why capable people still second guess themselves. This video goes one layer deeper, because it's not just that second guessing happens. It's what it quietly teaches the system over time, and what rebuilding trust in that signal actually involves. Not as an idea you agree with, as something you practice. And there's a very specific reason that learning happened. Internal signals are pre-analytical. They show up before thinking even starts, before evaluation, before verification, before your analytical minds had chance to weigh in. They arrive as a felt sense, a quiet knowing, a response that's already there before you've consciously built it. And for an analytical mind, that's a problem, because everything that's ever made you good at analysis was built on something entirely different. On evidence, on logic, on being able to check your work against the outside world. And those skills work. They work so consistently across so many parts of your life that eventually the system draws a conclusion that everything which can't be verified isn't quite enough on its own. That the first response, the pre-analytical signal, needs to be checked, cross-referenced and confirmed before you're allowed to act on it. So the process kicks in every time, automatically, without the signal ever getting a chance to just land. And here's where it starts to matter. Because second guessing isn't neutral. It's not just a habit that eats up time. Every time the system overrides an internal signal, it sends itself a message that the signal wasn't reliable enough on its own, that it needed more. And the system learns from that over and over for years, until the relationship between the signal and how you respond to it has quietly shifted. The signal still shows up, but now it arrives into a system that's been trained to treat it as a starting point for analysis rather than information in its own right. And over time, it gets quieter, not because it's gone, but because a quiet voice in a room full of analysis gets harder and harder to hear. The louder the analysis gets, the more the signal recedes, until eventually the signal's still there, but the system doesn't quite know how to find it anymore, or trust it, even when it does. And the more that lesson repeats, the harder the signal is to hear. You'll probably recognize this most clearly around decisions. The immediate response is right there. You know what feels right, what feels aligned, what the answer actually is, and then the processing starts. Research, alternatives, scenarios, what if this, what if that, what if the first response was wrong? An hour later, or a day later, or even a week later, you land right back on the answer you had at the very beginning, with almost nothing new to show for all that extra thinking. Just a bit worn out from all the analysis, with that faint sense that the whole thing was probably unnecessary. You might also spot it in reassurance seeking, asking someone else what they think about something you'd already decided internally. Not because their perspective is necessarily needed, but because the signal needs permission from outside before the system will actually act on it. And there's a particular kind of relief you feel when that confirmation finally arrives. It's not the relief of new information. It's the relief of the signal finally being allowed to be what it already was. Analysis evaluates information. Internal signals generate it. Analysis works with what's already there. Signals produce what analysis then goes to work on. Analysis is a tool. Signals are the source. The goal isn't to stop analysing. It's to change the order things happen in. Signal first, analysis in service of the signal, not instead of it, and not before it's had chance to land. And relationships can change, slowly, a bit at a time, through repeated small acts of a different kind of attention. Next time you notice an immediate response to something, before the analysis kicks in, pause. Not to act on it right away, just to notice it. What is the signal? Where do you feel it? What quality does it have? Then notice what happens next. Notice the exact moment the analytical mind steps in. The evaluation starting up, the alternatives forming, the need to verify. And then instead of following that straight away, stay with the signal a moment longer. Not to override the analysis, just to let the signal land before the analysis takes over. Because this is the moment that actually matters. The gap between signal and analysis just gets rebuilt in that gap. Not through big dramatic acts of intuitive decision making, through repeatedly noticing the signal before it gets covered over. And asking quietly, without pressure, what is this telling me? Not, is it right? Not, can I verify this? Just, what is this? And staying with it a moment longer than you normally would. Over time, this changes the relationship. Not dramatically. The analytical mind doesn't disappear. It doesn't get less precise or less capable. But it starts operating a little differently. The signal arrives, and instead of immediately triggering verification, it's allowed to be there first. Noticed, respected, given a moment before the analysis begins. And gradually the signal gets clearer. Not louder, clearer. Because the room is a little bit quieter than it used to be. And the system starts to remember that the signal was often right all along. And the hours spent overriding it kept bringing you back to the same starting point. And the cost of treating every signal as guilty until proven innocent is higher than it looks. In time, in energy, in clarity. And in the slow erosion of access to a layer of information that analysis alone was never going to give you. So, if you've spent years knowing the answer, and then spending real time and energy finding reasons it might be wrong, this is why. Not because the signal is unreliable, but because the system was trained to treat it that way. And that training can change, not by thinking about it differently, by repeatedly giving the signal a moment to land before the analysis starts. Small, quiet, incremental. Over time, the signal gets clearer, and the hour you used to spend arguing with yourself starts to shrink. If this is something you want to work through directly, with precision rather than alone, there's a link in the description where you can find out more. No pressure, just there if it's the right time. So if you've recognized yourself in any of this, it's worth sticking with the series, because each video builds on the last. In the next video, we look at something that naturally shows up once trust in internal signals starts coming back. Because not every internal signal is the same. Some are genuine, and some are anxious predictions that feel exactly like intuition. Knowing the difference is what the next video is about.